Today we're going to look at ellipses again, and I want you to be able to graph an ellipse and to write the equation for an ellipse. Now we did some of this already yesterday, so some of this is a review. In order to graph an ellipse, you're going to need to determine if the ellipse is horizontal or vertical. If the largest denominator is under the x, the ellipse is horizontal. So it's going to be going this way. If the largest denominator is under the y, the ellipse is going to be vertical. So it's going to be going this way. Okay, so in order to graph, you need to find the center of the ellipse because everything is measured from this point. So as we're doing this, let's go down and graph as we're going along. Okay, so we have an equation for an ellipse, and if I cover this up and pretend it's a circle, the center of that would be at -4, 3. Same thing for an ellipse. It's going to be at -4, 3, the center. Okay, now we skip this line here. Is it horizontal or vertical? Well, in order to determine that, we need to look for the biggest number. The biggest number is under the x, so that means it's going to be longer along the x-axis than along the y-axis. So that would make it horizontal. I'm just going to put an H there for horizontal. Okay, now we need to identify A and B. And yesterday, so identify, let's see, I'm still on here. Identify A and B. A squared is A is the square root. So we're going to take this part off. So it's just going to say that A is the square root of the largest denominator, and B is the square root of the smallest denominator. And we talked about this yesterday. You can identify C by using C squared equals A squared, and make sure a lot of time you're used to seeing A squared plus B squared minus C squared so often. This is actually C squared equals A squared minus B squared. This equation relates A, B, and C, so you can find the missing variable if you have two of them. All right, so we know that A squared is the largest number, so that means we take the square root of the largest number. So A is going to be 7. And then we're going to find B, so square root of 16 would be 4. And before we go any further, let's just go ahead and graph the center at -4 and 3. Let me use red so it comes out a little better here. So -4 and then 2, 3. Okay, you have a scale of 2, so be careful with that. All right, now, this is our center. Everything's measured from the center. If I look underneath the x, I see 49. I take the square root of that, I get 7, which means I have to move 7 on the x-axis, so plus or minus on either side of the center. So we'll do 2, 4, 6, and 7 would be here. 2, 4, 6, and 7 would be here. Okay, these are going to be my vertices. I'm just going to put a V here so I know that those are my vertices. And that's your major axis because it's your longest axis. Now we're going to see how far we have to go on the y-axis from the center. And we take the square root of 16, which is 4. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 above the center, and 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, below the center, which I just ended up putting it on the vertex. So let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I have my covertices. Okay, so you can either get your points from here off of your graph, or like I mentioned yesterday, if you have your center at -4, 3, and you know that you have to go along the x-axis, we can just add and subtract 7 to the 4. So I would have to add 7 and also subtract 7. When I add 7, that's going to give me 3, 3. And when I subtract 7, that's going to give me -11, 3. Okay, so those are my vertices. Now again, measuring from the center, I look and see how far I have to go on the y-axis. So my co-vertices are the y-axis. So again, my center is at -4, 3. And I have to go out 4 on the y-axis. So that means I add it to the y-coordinate. So add 4 and subtract 4. The x stays the same, so it's -4 for both points. And then when I add 4, I get 7. And when I subtract 4, I get -1. Okay, now we need to do the foci, and that's not clearly seen here, but we can use this equation to find it. So we say c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So c squared is going to equal 49 minus 16, or c squared equals 33. And if we take the square root of that, we're going to get approximately, c is approximately equal to 5.7. And again, we're just going to estimate that because we need to graph it. So c is 5.7. And that means the foci are always on the longest axis. They're always on the same axis as your vertices. So we need to add and subtract from the x-coordinate of our center. So again, our center is at -4, 3. And I'm going to have to add and subtract 5.7. So if I subtract 5.7 and add 5.7, when I subtract 5.7, I'm going to get a -9.7. And the y stays the same, so 3. And if I add 5.7, I'm going to end up with a 1.73. Okay, so we can graph that. We need to go to 5.7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little more. That's the focus. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little more. That's also the focus. Okay, and then the last thing that you need to do is just connect the points. You're only connecting the vertices and the co-vertices. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just looks similar to an ellipse there. All right, in section 2.4, you wrote the equation for lines, given the slope, the y-intercept, 2 points, and then you had, some other things that you were given. So I just said etc. here. So in section 10.3, you'll be asked to write equations for ellipses. All right, in order to write the equation for an ellipse, you're going to need the center, and we went over some of this yesterday, of the ellipse, and also A and B. Okay, now when you're given this information, I would strongly suggest that you just quickly sketch it out so you get where everything is laid out and don't make mistakes. All right, so we have the vertex at 6, 0. So we'll just put it right here, and it doesn't have to be perfect, it just can be real quick. 6, 0, and we have the co-vertex at 0, 4. So I'm just going to go here, 0, 4. This is my co-vertex, and this is my vertex. Okay, so we can see that these two would intersect at 0, 0. So that's going to be our center. Center is at 0, 0. Okay, now A. I am just going to write up here that A relates with the vertex. B goes to the co-vertex. And C represents the foci. And 1 would be a focus, 2 would be foci. Okay, so since this is the vertex, this is length A. So A is going to be 6. And since this is a co-vertex, B is going to be 4. So B is 4. Okay, since my center is at 0, 0, I don't have to add or subtract anything to x. So it's just going to be x squared plus y squared. And in standard form, ellipses are set equal to 1. Okay, now, I know that I went 6 on the x-axis, so A is 6. That has to go under the x. And I squared. This is just A. We need A squared, so it's 36. This is just B. and that's 4, so we square it, and that's 16. So here's the equation for our first ellipse. All right, let's do another one here. And again, I'm going to sketch it out. This time, last time we had the vertex and the covertex. This time we're given two different things. We're given the covertex and the focus. So let's just again sketch it out real quick. Focus at 0, 3. So 0, 3 is my focus. Covertex is at 5, 0. So 5, 0. Okay, and so we can tell where these two are intersecting here. It's just going to be the center is going to be at 0, 0. So we have another center at 0, 0. Okay, and then this is your covertex. So covertex, again, is represented by B. So this length is B. So B is going to equal 5. Okay, now we don't have A, but what we do have is the focus and the covertex. So the focus is C. The covertex, oops, that's not a very good looking C. This is C, and these are, the covertex is B. So again, we're going to have to use C squared equals A squared minus B squared. C squared, the length is 3, so this would be 3 squared equals A squared. We don't know what that is. That's what we're trying to find. B is 5, so we're going to subtract 5 squared. So this is going to be 9 equals A squared minus 25. And then if I add 25 to each side, I'm going to end up with 34 equals A squared. Now you don't have to take the square root of it. We could just say that the square root, or A equals the square root of 34, but we're going to square it anyway, so we don't have to change that to a decimal. Okay, so again, center is at 0, 0, so you're not adding or subtracting anything to the x or the y, so this is just going to be x squared plus y squared in the numerator, and always set equal to 1. And now we went 5 on the x-axis, so this is going to be 5 squared goes in the denominator because and it has to go on the x-axis because that's where we counted out 5. So that's going to be 25, and then on the y-axis we're going to have to go A squared, which is 34. Okay, so x squared over 25 plus y squared over 34 equals 1. All right, the other side is just a couple of graphs for you and a couple of equations.